Hi, the Mudbrooker here. I'm a curious fella, so rather than waiting around to get tagged, I decided to make a 5-fact video so I can indulge my curiosity and have an excuse to tag some other people. So without further ado, here's a glimpse of life in Mudbrook. I've been lucky in love, found the right one pretty much right off the bat. And contrary to the old saying, I do well at cards, dice, and most other games of chance. But when it comes to door prizes, raffles, things of that nature, I've only ever won twice in my life. A couple of years ago, I won $100 at work as an incentive for the safety program. If we'd go an entire week without getting somebody killed or maimed, the following Monday a pair of names would be drawn for $200 prizes. Apart from that, the only other time I've won a door prize was when I was 8 years old. Dad and I went to a horse pull and antique engine show not far from where we lived. I had a ball. Besides the horse pull, there was a bunch of old steam tractors set up and running, antique farm machinery, old gas-powered flywheel engines, all sorts of cool stuff like that. The local businesses which had sponsored the event, the feed mill, the implement dealer, among others, provided door prizes. What I was really hoping to win was one of the toy tractors the local John Deere dealer had put up, but sadly by the time my number was drawn, these were all gone. But I was still tickled to death to win something, so I ran up to the announcer stand, gave the man my ticket stub, and was handed a fairly heavy brown paper sack. I took it back to where me and Dad were sitting. I opened it up, and inside was 10 pounds of rat poison. To add insult to injury, Dad immediately confiscated my winnings because he knew damn well I'd find something to do with all that poison eventually. But I didn't really think of this until I started making this video, but what kind of fucking moron gives an 8-year-old a bag of rat poison in the first place? Honestly, what possible line of thinking could lead to the good conclusion that giving an 8-year-old that poison was a good idea? I would have never thought this could happen to me, but I have actually had a neighbor covet my ass. I used to have a stud donkey named Lars, and one fine summer morning I went out to feed the livestock and discovered Lars was missing. During the night, beavers had taken down a tree which fell across the fence, and Lars took advantage of the breach and made his escape. The area where we live is heavily wooded for miles around, so finding my ass could have been a daunting task, but I had a pretty good idea where he's headed. Our neighbor Brenda lived about a mile and a half away from us as the donkey wanders, and she had a bunch of horses, including a pair of beautiful Belgian mares. For those of you unfamiliar with the breed, Belgians are a heavy draft horse similar to a Clydesdale, only blonde. A couple of days before Lars got loose, Linda had paid an exorbitant stud fee to have her mares bred to a champion Belgian stallion. Anyway, I went over to Brenda's and asked her if she'd seen my ass, and she said no, but if she did, she let me know. And I continued my search. Almost 2 months passed, and I was losing hope of ever seeing Lars again. The kids came home from school one day and told me they'd heard him braying over by Brenda's. So I jumped in my truck and went on over, and just as I was pulling in her driveway, Linda pulled in. We drove up to the house, and Lars started braying again. Brenda told me that Lars had showed up that afternoon just as she was leaving for town, so she chased him into the pen and was planning on calling me as soon as she got home. I thanked Brenda for finding my wayward donkey, and with my ass firmly in hand, I went back home. But my story doesn't end with this happy little reunion. The following year, Brenda's prized Belgian mares both gave birth to mules. Here in the county where I live, there's an ordinance which says if you have a stallion, bull, or unneutered dog running at large, besides paying a hefty fine, the owner is absolutely liable for any damages. In this case, those damages would have been the difference in value between a pair of Belgian foals, sired by a champion stud, and a pair of mules. But Brenda never pursued the matter. If she had, little arithmetic would have revealed that in order for Lars to breed her mares, she would have had to have him pretty much the entire time he was missing. And even after all these years, I still haven't figured out how in the hell that donkey managed to breed a couple of mares that are damn near 3 times his size. I guess given the right motivation, anything's possible. I have an extra bone in my right ankle. It's not something I would have known about myself without having occasion to x-ray my ankle, and that occasion came by way of some workplace stupidity. I was working as a pipe layer for an underground utility company, installing a deep 48-inch storm sewer line. We were running about 18 feet deep in a wet, sandy, clay type of soil, so while the soil was fairly cohesive, it was by no means stable. So in order to have a reasonably safe place to work, we had to use a trench box. The trench box has two steel walls about 10 foot high, held apart by spreaders made of heavy wall pipe in the front and the back. Well, using a trench box has a couple of advantages. First, it keeps the trench from caving in on us poor bastards slaving away at the bottom of a deep hole. And second, it saves a lot of digging. Without a trench box, for a trench 18 feet deep to be safe, the top of the ditch would have had to been at least 48 foot wide. With a box, the trench only needs to be wide enough to pull the box ahead. The disadvantage is when something crosses our ditch like a water or sewer main, you have to lay the new pipe as close as possible to the obstruction, widen out the trench so it's safe to work outside the box, lay a length or two of pipe to get past whatever's in the way, pull the box out, drag it around to the other side, and put it back in. It's a time-consuming pain in the ass. And this is the situation we were in when the accident happened. The box was pulled up next to a sewer main which was crossing our ditch, and I was working at the front of the box, leveling off the ground so we could lay the pipe. For some strange reason, the backhoe operator decided to pull the box out. He raised the front end of the box up almost out of the ditch, exposing the banks, one of which promptly caved in. Now's a good time for a word about cave-ins. When a cohesive soil, like what we were in, caves in, rather than the face of the bank sloughing off and sliding in like an avalanche, what happens is the bank cracks a foot or two back from the edge, and a big slab peels off and it falls in like a brick wall tipping over. Since I was looking up at the hole operator about to scream at him for being an idiot, I didn't see that big slab of real estate coming. Well, it knocked me flat, buried me up to my chest, and it twisted my leg back up behind me in a real awkward and painful position. Fortunately, the hole operator managed to pull his head out of his ass long enough to set the box back down, and my bottom man came over and helped dig me out. Once I got myself excavated, went back to work for a while, but within an hour, my ankle was hugely swollen, and pretty obvious I needed medical attention. So I went to the local hospital and had it x-rayed. And I sat there and waited for the results, and waited, and waited, and waited, and finally the doctor came back in after about 2 hours and said, "Oh, sorry it took so long, but I had to get an orthopedic surgeon to have a look at your x-rays." Oh, well, that's great. No, it's okay. You see this thing here? She put the x-ray up on the viewer so I could see it. At first I thought that was a bone chip, but it's way too big and it's real regular shape, so I had an orthopedic man take a look at it. He says not to worry about it, it's just an extra bone. Well, alrighty then. I don't know for sure if I have any extraneous bits in my other joints, and given what I went through to discover the first one, I'm not really all that eager to find out.